first time I saw ranch dressing drip off a stranger's used fry and land on my plate. While my boyfriend smiled like it was normal, I stayed quiet and felt something crack inside me. My name is Waverly. I am 28, and I work as a leasing consultant at a luxury apartment building outside Chicago. People think that because I smile for a living, I am soft, easy, the kind of woman who will hand over a pen, a parking pass, an apology, and half her lunch before anyone even asks. The truth is, I was raised to be generous. And for most of my life, I wore that generosity like it was the nicest thing about me. My mother used to say that a table only felt warm if everybody at it felt welcome. So I learned to offer the last slice, the better seat, the bigger piece, the first pour. I learned to make space. What nobody teaches you is that some people don't see kindness as kindness. They see it as an opening. I had been dating Griffin for a little over a year when this happened. He was handsome in a polished, dependable kind of way. Dark sweaters, clean sneakers, nice watch, not flashy. He worked in insurance, loved routines, and could make a dentist appointment sound like a military operation. He said he liked that I was warm, that I made life feel softer. Back then, I thought that was a compliment. He had this best friend, Camden. Camden was one of those men who could walk into any room and act like he belonged at the center of it. Loud laugh, broad shoulders, expensive beard oil, cheap manners. He was funny enough to get away with things for a while, which is a dangerous kind of funny. The first few times we all went out together, I tried to like him because Griffin clearly did. They had known each other since college. Griffin talked about loyalty the way some people talk about religion, and Camden was part of that religion. At first, the problem seemed small. Camden would forget his wallet and laugh it off. Camden would order an appetizer for the table, take most of it, then say, "We all shared, so let's split it." Camden would ask for a bite of somebody's sandwich and take half. Camden would tip like generosity was a personal insult. Still, I kept the peace. That is what women like me are praised for. Right up until the day it starts costing us too much. The night everything really started was a Thursday. We were at this trendy burger place with black pendant lights and metal stools that looked cute but punished your spine. The kind of place where every table had a metal caddy full of ketchup, hot sauce, and paper napkins that disintegrated on contact. I ordered a truffle burger with sweet potato fries. Griffin got a double bacon something with onion rings. Camden ordered wings, a burger, and a loaded fries plate for the table. When our food came, I did what I always do without thinking. I nudged the loaded fries toward the middle. I smiled and said, "Everybody dig in." Camden dug in like somebody had announced the end of the world. He ate from the center first, then from the sides, then reached over and plucked onion rings off Griffin's plate. Griffin laughed. Then Camden looked at my fries and said, "Those look insane. Can I?" I should have said no. Instead, I smiled because I was trying to be easy. "Sure, take a few." He reached across the table, grabbed one with his fingers, dipped it in his own ranch, took a bite, then dropped the rest back onto my plate like that was a totally normal thing to do. I froze. It was such a tiny thing, just a half-eaten fry. A little white streak of ranch on my plate, but it did something to me. Maybe because it was gross. Maybe because it was careless. Maybe because he didn't even look at me after. He just kept talking, already reaching for another one. I looked at Griffin. He didn't say anything. He just kept eating. On the drive home, I tried to be calm. "Hey," I said, watching the lights blur past the passenger window. "Your friend putting food back on my plate after biting it was kind of disgusting." Griffin kept his eyes on the road. "Camden's just comfortable around us. That is not what comfortable means." He sighed. "The same way people do when they're already decided you're being difficult. You're reading too much into it." I pressed my lips together and stared ahead. That became a pattern. Little moments, little warnings, each one small enough to sound petty when spoken out loud, but together they formed a shape I couldn't ignore. If I ordered calamari for the table, Camden took the lion's share and somehow still managed to say, "Wow, I barely touched any." If Griffin and I grabbed brunch with him, the bill became a math puzzle that ended with me covering the gap because I was too embarrassed to let the server stand there while Camden patted his pockets and laughed. If I made brownies and brought them to a game night, Camden would take 4 home in a napkin and call me sweet. Griffin always had an explanation. He's going through a rough patch. He doesn't notice stuff like that. That's just how he is. I started to hate that phrase. That's just how he is. As if that settled everything. As if other people were just supposed to adjust themselves around. A grown man who left damage wherever he went. The part that got under my skin most wasn't even Camden. It was Griffin watching it happen. At first he shrugged it off. Then he defended it. Then when I pushed, he somehow made me feel rude for noticing. I would replay conversations in my head while folding laundry, while brushing my teeth, while standing in the grocery store staring at 2 brands of pasta. Sauce, like the answer to my relationship, might be hidden in the marinara aisle. One Sunday I tested something. We were having dinner with Griffin's sister, Noelle, and her husband at a little Italian place downtown. Candle on the table, cloth napkins. Quiet enough that you could hear a spoon touch porcelain from the next booth. Camden wasn't there. I ordered gnocchi. Griffin got chicken parmesan. When the server set our plates down, I didn't offer a bite. Not to Griffin. Not to anyone. I just smiled, thanked the server, and started eating. Halfway through dinner, Noelle looked at me and said, "You actually look relaxed tonight." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. That sentence stayed with me. "You actually look relaxed tonight," as if my body had been telling the truth before my mouth did. A week later, Griffin invited Camden over for a Sunday football game. I had made spinach dip, sliders, and a charcuterie board because apparently I enjoy laboring for men who call heating frozen wings hosting. Camden arrived empty-handed, kissed the air near my cheek, and immediately peeled the lid off the dip before I had even set out the plates. By halftime, most of the food was gone. Not because everyone had eaten, because Camden had. At one point, he actually picked meat off the board with the same hand he had just licked seasoning from. I watched him do it. Watched Griffin do nothing. Watched myself carry an empty tray back to the kitchen with my jaw so tight it hurt. Then came the first twist. When I stepped into the kitchen, Noelle was there. She had arrived late and came in through the back while the game noise eyes swallowed the front door opening. She leaned against my counter, watching me scrape together what was left of the sliders. "You know he does this on purpose, right?" she said quietly. I looked at her. "Camden?" She gave me a look that said I already knew the answer. "No, Griffin." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "What does that even mean?" She lowered her voice. "He likes being the reasonable one. If Camden acts out and you react, Griffin gets to play referee. He gets to be the calm guy between the dramatic woman and the messy friend. It makes him feel in control." The room went still. I wanted to reject it immediately. It sounded too ugly, too calculated. But the second she said it, a dozen moments rearranged themselves in my memory like furniture, finally being pushed into the right corners. The shrugging, the minimizing, the tiny look of irritation whenever I named exactly what had happened. The way he never stopped Camden before the line was crossed, only managed me after. I whispered, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Noelle exhaled, "Because you looked happy. And because I know my brother. If I'd said it too early, you would have defended him." I hated that she was right. We went back out there with fresh plates and tight smiles, and I said nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because for the first time, I wanted to listen harder than I spoke. After that, I started paying attention differently. Not emotionally. Practically. I noticed Griffin always suggested group dinners where the bill would get muddy. I noticed Camden only got bold with food when Griffin was nearby. I noticed that if I stayed silent, they both revealed more. So I stopped arguing. I didn't complain in the car. I didn't point things out in the moment. I didn't tell Griffin what I thought. I said, "Okay, that was all." "Okay?" He seemed relieved, which told me plenty. A few weekends later, Griffin suggested we all go out for Camden's birthday. There would be 8 of us at a steakhouse in the city. A nicer place than usual. White tablecloths, dim lighting, serious cocktails. The kind of restaurant where the menu didn't list side dishes under the entrees because they expected you to know better and spend extra. Something in me sharpened. I said yes. That should have been his first warning. On the day of the dinner, I got to the restaurant 10 minutes early. The hostess led me through a room glowing amber under low lights. Past couples leaning in close over wine, glasses and businessmen speaking softly over ribeyes. Everything smelled like butter, char, and money. I slid into my seat, smoothed my dress over my knees, and took a slow breath. When the others arrived, the energy changed immediately. Camden came in loud, grinning, already clapping Griffin on the shoulder. He kissed me on the cheek like we were family. Griffin looked pleased with himself, like he had assembled a good night out with all the right pieces in all the right places. I smiled. The server came by with waters and menus. We ordered drinks. Camden got an old-fashioned he could not pronounce correctly, and then joked with the server until she laughed politely. Griffin ordered the same bourbon he always did. I ordered sparkling water with lemon and listened. Then came the second twist. Camden leaned back in his chair, glanced around the table, and said, "Since we're all adults with jobs now, I think we should finally stop doing the whole split the bill thing." Everyone looked at him. I almost smiled, because for a second, I thought maybe the universe had decided to save me some work. Then he added, "Like some of us order more, some less." I get that. But on birthdays, the group should cover the birthday person. That's basic. There it was. Not growth, just a better angle. A couple people around the table nodded awkwardly. Because social pressure is a powerful drug. Griffin immediately said, "That makes sense." Of course he did. I folded my napkin in my lap and said nothing. Dinner rolled on. Bread arrived. Camden took the first 2 pieces. Appetizers came. He reached across everybody to get to the shrimp. Entree landed, and somehow he was still scouting everyone else's plates. At one point, he stared at my steak and said, "Damn, you should let me try a bite of that. I should have gotten yours." I smiled at him, calm as glass. I know. He blinked, almost amused, then laughed and went back to his own food. That was the moment I knew he thought I was beaten. Halfway through the meal, right as the tension began to settle into that dangerous quiet where people think the night is safe again, I leaned closer to the table and lowered my voice. Quick real-life pause. When I am up late editing and replaying stories like this, your comments are the part that remind me there are real people listening. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. All right, now let me take you back. Dessert menus had just been placed on the table. When the server asked the question I had been waiting for, "Will this be one check or separate checks?" Before anyone else could answer, Griffin said, "One is fine. We'll sort it out." The server nodded, and I finally spoke. "Actually," I said gently, "mine is separate." The table went quiet. Not loud quiet. Not dramatic quiet. The most beautiful kind. Confused quiet. Griffin turned to me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Babe, it's easier if we just do one." I kept my tone light. "For you, maybe." Camden laughed like it was a joke. "Come on, don't break the birthday spirit." I looked directly at the server, not at him. "Mine is separate, and if possible, I'd also like the itemized copy for the full table." The server hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Of course." Noelle, seated 2 chairs down, reached for her water and hid a smile behind the glass. Griffin leaned toward me. "What are you doing?" I turned to him, still soft, making sure I only pay for what I ate. He sat back, his face tightening. Nobody said much after that. You could feel the mood tilt. Even the candles seemed less flattering. Camden tried to joke his way through it, but nobody gave him much to work with. When the checks arrived, mine was clean and simple. Steak, sparkling water, tax, tip, done. The rest of the table got one long receipt. Camden stared at it, then actually laughed in disbelief. "Why is this so high?" Noelle's husband said dryly, "Because food costs money." The server stood there while the table began. The ugly little dance I had seen too many times. People fishing for cards. Quick mental math. Awkward pauses. Camden patting his pockets and squinting at the receipt like maybe it had personally betrayed him. Then Griffin did something I did not expect. He looked at me and said with a thin smile, "Since you started this, can you at least help explain who had what?" Started this? 3 words. 3 perfect words. I could have fought him right there. Could have listed every meal, every tip, every time I covered for men who treated generosity like an ATM. Instead, I reached into my purse and slid a folded stack of receipts onto the table. Every group dinner from the past 3 months where I had paid more than my share. Every Venmo request left unanswered answered. Every itemized line where Camden ordered extra drinks, extra apps, extra everything, and still somehow came up short. I had not announced them, had not weaponized them. I had simply kept them. Paper, history, proof. Camden looked down first, then Griffin. Neither of them spoke. I rested my hand on top of the little stack and said, very quietly, I already did the math. Camden's face lost color first. It was subtle, but I saw it. That easy, smug looseness in him tightened all at once, like somebody had pulled an invisible cord through his spine. Griffin did not reach for the receipts. He just stared at them, then at me, with that flat, stunned look people get when they realize the version of you they counted on is gone. The server was still standing there with her card tray, trying very hard to become furniture. I gave her a small smile. You can give them another minute. She nodded and stepped away. Nobody rushed to fill the silence. For months, I had been the one who softened moments like this. I had laughed things off, smoothed rough edges, made people comfortable when they had done absolutely nothing to earn comfort. It hit me then, sitting under the low golden light of that steakhouse, that silence can be a form of truth. If you leave it alone long enough, the right person usually panics. Camden let out a short breath and tried a grin. Okay, this is kind of intense for dinner. Noelle's husband leaned back in his chair and said, so is expecting other people to bankroll you every weekend. Camden's grin slipped. Griffin finally reached for the papers and flipped through them. I watched his eyes move. Fast at first, then slower. Date, restaurant, total, itemized order. My payment. The missing balance, the tip gap, the little notes I had scribbled in the corners after each meal, so I would remember exactly what happened. Not dramatic notes, just facts. Forgot wallet, covered short tab again, paid tip because nobody else did. Split appetizer, ate most of it. I had not even realized how much those tiny lines would hurt when read back to someone else. But facts laid out cleanly can be crueler than anger. Griffin lowered the stack and said, you kept receipts? His voice was low, controlled, which meant he was embarrassed. I folded my hands in my lap. I started after the seafood place. Camden frowned. What seafood place? I looked at him. The one where you ordered oysters for the table. Ate almost all of them, then said you only had cash for parking. A couple people at the table looked down. One woman, a friend of Camden's girlfriend, actually pressed her lips together to stop a laugh. Camden shifted in his seat. You're making this sound worse than it was. No, I said. I'm making it sound exact. That landed harder than I expected. He looked at Griffin for backup. Griffin did what he always did when things got real. He tried to move the conversation away from behavior and toward tone. This doesn't need to become a whole public thing. The old me might have tripped over that, might have apologized for timing, for atmosphere, for making anybody uncomfortable, but something in me had gotten very still. I said, then it should have been handled privately the first 5 times. Noelle looked down at her drink. Her shoulders moved once, like she was trying not to smile. Camden pushed back in his chair. So what, this is about me taking a few bites here and there? Are you serious right now? There it was. The narrowing, the minimizing, the attempt to make the problem sound petty, so the person naming it looks ridiculous. I had seen it enough by then that it no longer confused me. It's not about a few bites, I said. It's about entitlement. It's about you behaving like other people's food. Money and patience belong to you. And it's about Griffin acting like noticing that makes me difficult. A few heads turned toward Griffin. His jaw flexed. I never said you were difficult. I looked at him for a second. I did not raise my voice. That was the part that unsettled him. You didn't have to. You just kept treating me like I was. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That should have been enough. It should have ended there, with discomfort and a divided check and 2 men quietly forced to sit in what they had created. But then the third twist arrived. The server came back and placed a small leather booklet beside Camden. I'm so sorry, she said gently, but one of the cards declined. The table went dead silent again. Camden laughed, too fast. That's impossible. She gave him the same professional smile people use when they absolutely know it is not impossible. You're welcome to try another form of payment. He pulled out a second card. Ran that one. Declined. By now, the heat had climbed all the way up his neck. He looked at Griffin, and I watched that old rhythm try to reform right in front of me. Camden kneading, Griffin rescuing, me absorbing the emotional cost. Except this time I was no longer standing in the space between them, making their pattern easier. Griffin took out his wallet with a clipped, irritated movement. I've got it. I tilted my head and said not loudly, do you? He stopped. Everyone at the table looked at him. I went on calm and even, because if you cover him again, then please don't spend the next week acting like this somehow became my fault. That sentence did what shouting never could. It pinned the truth in place before he could wiggle out of it later. He stared at me, and for the first time in our relationship, he looked uncertain. Not annoyed. Not superior, uncertain. Camden muttered, I'll pay you back. Noelle's husband snorted into his glass. Nobody believed him. Not even Griffin. In the end, people covered the gap. Because restaurants do not care about your friendship politics, and the bill had to be closed somehow. But the mood was wrecked. The birthday performance was over, and Camden knew it. He left the restaurant still joking, but too loudly, like a man whistling in the dark so he can pretend he is not scared. Outside, the city air was cold and sharp. My heels clicked against the sidewalk as we walked toward the parking garage. Griffin stayed half a step ahead of me, which is how I knew he was furious. Men who want to be seen as good never get angrier than when you remove the audience they were performing for. The second we reached the elevator, he turned. What the hell was that? I looked at my reflection in the metal doors. My face was pale, controlled. My heart was slamming so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my voice came out steady. That was me being done. With Camden, with all of it. He let out a laugh that had no humor in it. You blindsided me. No, I stopped warning you. The elevator doors opened. We stepped in. Noelle and her husband took the next one, which told me she knew better than to get trapped in a box with us. Griffin hit the garage level so hard the button clicked twice. This whole thing, he said, could have been handled in a normal conversation. I turned to him then. I tried normal. In the car. In our kitchen. In bed at midnight. Over coffee. After brunch. You kept defending him, minimizing it, or acting acting like I was uptight. So no, what you mean is, it could have been handled in a way that protected your comfort. He looked away first. That gave me a strange, almost dizzy feeling. Not triumph, not exactly. More like balance returning after standing crooked for too long. We got into the car in silence. He drove out of the garage too fast, then slowed because there were cameras. Typical, reckless in private, careful where it might cost him. For a few minutes, the only sound was the turn signal and the muted hum of the heater. Streetlights flashed across the windshield in long, pale bars. I watched them come and go. Then he said, quieter, "You embarrassed me." I stared out the passenger window. "That was never the part that bothered you before." He did not answer. I thought that would be our lowest point of the night. It wasn't. When we got back to his apartment, I kicked off my heels and started unpinning my hair in the hallway mirror. Griffin stood by the kitchen island with both hands braced against the counter. He looked tired now. Angry, but tired beneath it. The performance had cost him. Then his phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. "Camden?" I asked. He did not answer quickly enough. That told me enough. I walked over, held out my hand, and said, "Let me see." He actually hesitated. That was the moment something cold moved through me. Because a man with nothing to hide does not pause over a locked screen in front of his girlfriend after a fight about loyalty. "Griffin." He handed me the phone. The messages were already open. Camden had sent a stream of texts. "Bro, what was that? Why does she always act like she's above everybody? You need to get her under control." And then a minute later, "I told you this would happen if you kept letting her think she runs things." I read that line twice, not because I didn't understand it, because I did. My thumb went up the thread, and there it was. The ugly little history behind all those dinners. More than I had expected. More than I had wanted. Camden mocking the way I portioned food for parties. Camden calling me princess plate. Griffin replying with laughing emojis. Griffin complaining that I made everything into a principle. Camden saying, "Let her get mad. She'll still cover the check if it gets awkward." For a second, I honestly thought I might be sick. All those times I had gone home wondering whether I was overreacting. All those careful conversations where I had tried to explain my discomfort, like it was a delicate thing that deserved tenderness. All those moments Griffin had looked me in the face and acted confused. He had known. Not vaguely, not passively, known. I handed the phone back without a word. His face changed the second he realized how far up I had scrolled. "Waverly." That was all he said. My name. Soft. Warning and apology trying to wear the same coat. I laughed once and it sounded broken even to me. "You let me think I was imagining it." His voice got urgent. "It wasn't like that." I stepped back before he could touch me. "Then tell me what it was like." He ran a hand through his hair. "Sometimes Camden says stupid things. I don't agree with everything, but you enjoyed it." He blinked. "What?" "You enjoyed watching me be the one who cared. The one who looked sensitive. The one who had to explain basic respect while you got to act easygoing." My chest felt tight, but I kept going. "You let your friend disrespect me because it made you feel like the normal one." His silence was answer enough. I nodded slowly, and something inside me finished breaking. Not loudly, cleanly. The worst betrayals are not always explosive. Sometimes they are quiet, repetitive, intimate, 100 little moments where someone chooses convenience over your dignity until the pattern becomes the relationship. He tried again. "You're twisting this." I looked at him and felt, for the first time, absolutely no confusion. "No, I am seeing it." He took a step forward. "So what, you're going to throw away a year over dinner and a few texts?" I picked up my purse from the chair and slung the strap over my shoulder. "No," I said. "I'm throwing it away over the kind of man who could read those texts, laugh at them, and still expect me to feel safe with him." His face hardened. "You're being dramatic." That word should have cut me. Instead, it set me free. Because once a person says that after the truth is sitting naked in the room, there is nothing left to save. No hidden depth, no misunderstood angle. Just a plain disappointing character finally standing in his own light. I walked to the bedroom, took my overnight bag from the closet, and started folding in the things I had there. A sweater, makeup pouch, phone charger. The silk pajamas I had bought because he once said he liked that color on me. It felt almost funny, packing tiny pieces of trust into a bag while he stood in the doorway trying to recover control. "You're seriously leaving?" I zipped the bag. "Tonight, yes. And what am I supposed to tell people?" I looked up at him. Of all the things he could have said, that was what he reached for. Not "how do we fix this?" Not "are you okay?" Not "I am sorry." What am I supposed to tell people? I almost felt sorry for him. "Tell them the truth," I said. "If you can find it." I walked past him. He did not stop me. That hurt too, in its own way, but not enough to make me turn around. When I got downstairs, the night air hit my face like cold water. I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel and finally let myself shake. Anger, shame, relief, grief, it all came at once. A storm with too many names. I had loved him. That was the humiliating part. I had really loved him. Not the polished version he showed the world, but the man I thought existed underneath it. And now I knew. Sometimes there is nothing underneath. Just appetite. Just image. Just a person waiting for you to get tired enough to mistake endurance for love. I started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and drove toward my apartment, through sleeping streets that looked cleaner than I felt. Around me, windows glowed in tall buildings, little squares of private life stacked against the dark. Somewhere, couples were making tea. Somebody was apologizing sincerely. Somebody was asleep beside a person they trusted. At a red light, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. "Noelle," I answered on speaker. Her voice was soft. "Are you okay?" I laughed through my nose. "No." "Good," she said. I blinked. "Good?" "Yes, because if you were okay right now, I'd worry you were numb." The light turned green. I drove on. She was quiet for a second, then said, "I'm sorry. For him, for my brother. For not saying more earlier." I swallowed. "You tried. I am going to tell you one thing," she said, and her voice took on that steady, clear tone some women have. "When they are about to hand you something, you need more than you want. Do not go back tomorrow because he suddenly knows how to say the right words." Men like that confuse regret with change. I tightened my grip on the wheel. The city lights thinned as I neared home. "I won't," I said. And for the first time that night, I heard myself and believed it. The next morning, I woke up with mascara still faintly smoking smudged under one eye, and that awful hollow feeling in my chest, like someone had scooped out the center of me while I slept. For a few seconds, I forgot. Then I saw the overnight bag half unzipped on my bedroom chair, and everything came rushing back in one hard wave. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the quiet hum of my apartment. No traffic yet, no texts being answered, no performance. Just me, the pale light creeping through the blinds, and the truth sitting at the foot of the bed like it had been waiting for me to open my eyes. My phone buzzed. Griffin. I let it ring out. Then another call. Then a text. Can we talk? Then another. Please. Then another. You left some things here. That one almost made me laugh. It was such a Griffin move, trying to make a collapse sound administrative, as if what had happened between us could be filed under forgotten belongings and picked up between noon and 1. I turned the phone face down and got up. My legs felt heavy but steady. That surprised me. I had expected to feel shattered. Instead, I felt sore. Bruised in the soul maybe, but not broken. Not beyond function. I made coffee. Burned the first piece of toast because I drifted off staring out the kitchen window. Showered too hot. Tied my hair up. Pulled on jeans and an oversized sweatshirt. Ordinary things. Tiny human rituals that quietly say, I am still here. By late morning, the texts had multiplied. From Griffin. From Camden, unbelievably. From an unknown number that I guessed was one of Griffin's friends trying to help. I opened Camden's first, mostly because I wanted to understand the level of audacity I was dealing with. Hey, I think last night got blown way out of proportion. If I ever made you uncomfortable, that wasn't my intention. You know how I am. I actually smiled at that. You know how I am. There was that phrase again, the sacred shield of selfish adults everywhere. I did not reply. Griffin's messages were longer, smoother, more careful. I love you. Camden is an idiot, but he's not me. I should have handled it better. I was embarrassed and defensive. Please don't make a permanent decision based on one bad night. I sat down at my kitchen table and read that message 3 times. Not because it confused me, but because I needed to watch my own reaction to it. The old version of me would have instantly started translating for him. He means he panicked. He means he is ashamed. He means he does love me, just badly. But once you have seen the machinery behind someone's behavior, their wording loses some of its magic. It was never one bad night. It was every night that had prepared it. The seafood place, the burger place, the game day at the apartment, the receipts, the group texts, the laughing emojis, the way he said dramatic when what he meant was inconvenient. I finally wrote back one sentence. I will come by this evening for the rest of my things. His reply came immediately. Can we at least talk in person? I set the phone down. No response was a response. Around noon, Noelle texted me. Do not go alone if you think he will try to talk you into circles. I stared at that and felt a warm, sad kind of gratitude. I wrote back, I'll be fine, but thank you. She answered with, fine and guarded are different. Just remember that. That sat with me all afternoon. By the time evening came, I had made a decision that felt small from the outside and enormous inside my body. I was not going there to process. I was not going there to debate. I was not going there to help him understand what he had done to me, as if emotional comprehension were a service women should provide to men who have already failed them. I was going there to leave cleanly. When I pulled into his apartment complex just after sunset, the sky was a darkening blue, bruised at the edges. His windows were lit. For a second, seeing them hit me in the chest. I had spent so many nights in that apartment, curled under blankets watching bad movies, folding his laundry while he cooked pasta, falling asleep to the sound of rain against the glass. Memory has no shame. It will offer tenderness even when the truth is standing right behind it. I carried that ache with me to the door and knocked. He opened it too fast, like he had been standing nearby waiting. He looked awful. Not cinematic awful. Real awful, unshaven, tired eyes, shirt wrinkled. The kind of face people wear after a night of bad sleep and worse thoughts. For half a second, I saw the man I had loved. Then I remembered what that man had done with privacy when I trusted him. Hey, he said. I stepped inside but kept my purse on my shoulder. I'm here for my things. He nodded. They're in the bedroom. I walked past him and felt his eyes on my back the whole way. The overnight bag sat on the bed, this time with the rest of my things folded beside it. A couple sweaters, my skincare, a book, the spare charger I kept in his nightstand. All the little domestic traces of me gathered up and made suddenly impersonal. I started packing in silence. After a minute, he said, I know you're angry. I zipped the side pocket and said, yes. He was leaning against the dresser, watching me with that careful expression people use when they think the right combination of sincerity and sadness might still reopen a locked door. I've been thinking all day, he said, and I get why you're hurt. I kept folding, but I think you're also seeing me in the worst possible light. That made me stop. I turned to him slowly. You showed me your worst possible light. His mouth tightened. That's not fair. No, I said. Fair would have been you defending me before it became unbearable. He pushed away from the dresser. I said I was wrong. I looked at him. You said you were embarrassed. He blinked. That was when I knew this conversation was not for me. It was for him. He wanted a path back to the version of himself that still believed he was a good man, who had simply mishandled optics. But regret without ownership is just vanity with a sad face. He softened his voice. I love you. The words landed in the room and just sat there. I did not doubt that some version of him believed them. Love, for some people, is real in the moment and useless in practice. It can exist beside selfishness, beside cowardice, beside disrespect. Feeling something is not the same as being shaped by it. I lifted the bag from the bed. You loved being comfortable with me. His eyes flashed. That's not true. Then why did your friend feel that comfortable talking about me like that? He opened his mouth, then shut it. He had no answer that did not indict him. I walked toward the door, and that was when he tried the move I had almost expected. Camden texted me, he said. He wants to apologize to you in person. I stopped, hand on the hallway wall. There it was. Not the truth. Not accountability. A rearrangement. A new staging. A fresh chance for me to become flexible, while they both stayed essentially the same. I turned and looked at him. That's generous of him. Griffin frowned, sensing something in my tone but not quite catching it. So maybe we can all sit down and clear this up. I almost smiled, because there it was again. The triangle, the structure they both preferred. Camden acts out. Griffin moderates. I absorb. I explain. I forgive enough to keep the system running. I said no. He stared at me. I continued, very calm. There is nothing to clear up. He disrespected me because he could. You let him because it benefited you. That is the whole story. His face hardened. You really think people are that simple? Noelle, I answered. Well, she asked. I let out a breath I felt all the way in my ribs. It's done. She was quiet for a moment, then said, good. I smiled despite myself. You keep saying that like it's a prayer. It is, she said. For you. The next week was ugly in the quiet ways breakups are ugly. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Administrative grief. Changing streaming passwords. Returning a key. Deleting a grocery list we shared. Finding one of his socks in my laundry basket and staring at it like it had personally offended me. Hearing a song in the pharmacy. And having to stand very still by the shampoo aisle until my face settled. Camden tried once more. He sent a long message about misunderstandings. About how he came from a family where everyone shared food. About how he never meant disrespect and thought we all had that kind of bond. He wrote like a man applying beige paint over mold. I did not answer him either. Instead, I blocked both of them. Quietly. No announcement. No speech. Just absence where my access used to be. That should have been the end. But life, when it wants to be poetic, sometimes gives you one last little gift. About 3 weeks later, I ran into one of the women from the birthday dinner at a wine bar downtown. Her name was Zara. We had never been close, but that night had made us familiar in a way that awkward witness moments sometimes do. She recognized me near the bar, smiled, and came over. We talked about work, winter, nothing important. Then her expression shifted. I probably shouldn't say this, she said. That sentence almost always means someone absolutely should. I lifted my glass. And maybe you should. She gave a small guilty laugh. Camden had another group dinner last weekend. I raised an eyebrow. She leaned in a little, and apparently he tried the same thing. Ordered like crazy. Assumed people would cover him. Only this time nobody did. A slow warmth moved through me. What happened? Zara let out a breath through her nose. The check came. Everyone paid for their own. He came up short. Griffin wasn't there. And when Camden tried to joke his way out of it, the server said they'd need a card or they'd have to involve the manager. I could already see it. The white tablecloth, the fading smile, the social oxygen disappearing from the room. Zara shook her head. One of the guys finally told him nobody was doing this with him anymore. Not after what happened at his birthday dinner. I looked at her. People knew? She gave me a pointed look. Waverly. Everybody knew. That hit me harder than I expected. Not the humiliation, the relief. Because for so long I had been trapped in that lonely space where manipulation tries to put you, the space where you wonder if you are the only one seeing clearly. And all along, other people had seen it too. They just had not wanted to be the first one to make the room uncomfortable. Zara took a sip of wine. For what it's worth, a lot of us were impressed by how calmly you handled it. I smiled faintly. It didn't feel calm. It looked like dignity, she said. After she walked away, I stood there holding that sentence in my chest. It looked like dignity. I carried it home with me, and then 1 month after the breakup, the final twist arrived. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in my apartment wearing fuzzy socks, cleaning out a junk drawer because apparently that is what healing looks like in your late 20s. Old batteries, rubber bands, menus from takeout places that had gone out of business, a birthday candle, 3 mystery keys. My phone lit up with a message request from a number I did not know. It was from Griffin's mother. I almost ignored it. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and maybe some small bruised part of me still wanted to know how stories survive after they leave your mouth and enter someone else's family. I opened it. Her message was short. I heard what happened. I am sorry for my son. Also, thank you. I stared at the screen. Then another message came. Noelle finally told me the truth about those dinners. I used to think you were too accommodating. Turns out you were just kind in a room full of people who had started treating kindness like a tab they never had to close. I sat down on the floor beside the open drawer. There are moments when healing does not arrive, like sunlight or music or some grand swelling certainty. Sometimes it arrives as language. One sentence that names what happened so cleanly, you can finally put down the weight of explaining it. Kindness is not a tab they never had to close. I wrote back, thank you for saying that. She sent one more message. He is embarrassed now, but embarrassment is late. You deserved respect on time. I set the phone down and laughed once, softly, with tears in my eyes. Respect on time? That was it. That was the whole thing. I had been starving for a while handing out pieces of myself to people who called it generosity and counted on it like rent money. After that day, something in me changed in practical ways. At restaurants, I stopped offering my plate automatically. When someone reached without asking, I moved it. When the check came, I asked for separate bills with a smile so easy it felt almost luxurious. If a man called me difficult for having a boundary, I did not explain. I just listened to the information and acted accordingly. Months later, Noelle and I got dinner together. Just us. A tiny candlelit bistro with crispy bread, red wine, and a server who knew how to appear exactly when needed and vanish exactly when not. She asked if I was dating anyone. Not seriously, I said. She nodded. Good. I laughed. That seems harsh. No, she said. That seems peaceful. And she was right. Peace had become more attractive to me than potential. Clarity more attractive than chemistry. A man who could handle hearing, no more attractive than one who knew how to charm a room. When dessert came, the server set a slice of chocolate cake between us with 2 forks. Noelle smiled and pushed the plate gently toward the center. Now this, she said, is actual sharing. I laughed so hard I almost cried. And maybe that is the part nobody tells you after you leave something quietly toxic. The world does not become instantly beautiful. You do not wake up transformed, but your nervous system starts learning new math. It begins to understand that love without respect is hunger. That peace is not boring. That being called difficult by the wrong people can be a kind of compliment. So yes, I lost a boyfriend, but I also lost the habit of making myself smaller to keep selfish people comfortable. And that was worth far more than dinner. dinner. When I look back now, the image that stays with me is not the receipts on the table or Griffin's face when I walked out. It is that first tiny moment I ignored for too long. Ranch dressing on my plate. A used fry dropped back where it did not belong. My body knew before my mouth did. My silence had broken inside me because some part of me already understood that disrespect rarely arrives all at once. It usually shows up as something small, almost silly, easy to excuse, until one day you realize the whole relationship has been eating off your plate. For a long time, I thought my strength would look loud when it finally came. It didn't. It looked like records, like calm, like leaving, like letting people explain themselves into a corner and then refusing to stand there with them. And the last thing I ever heard about Griffin was from Noel. Months later, over coffee, he started dating someone new. Apparently on one of their first group dinners, he reached for a bite off her plate without asking. She put her fork down, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Absolutely not." Noel took a sip of coffee and smiled at me over the rim of the cup. He told me it was jarring. I smiled back. "Good," I said. Because sometimes the quietest revenge is not ruining anyone. It is simply being the first person who refused to keep feeding them. I want to step out of the story for a second and say something real. What happened here was never just about food. That is why situations like this mess with your head so badly. On the surface, it looks small, petty even. A bite here, a check there, a joke that lands wrong. And because each moment seems survivable by itself, you start talking yourself out of what your body already knows. That is how disrespect grows. Not all at once, slowly, repeatedly, in ways that train you to doubt your own discomfort. And I think a lot of people, especially women, get raised to confuse being good with being endlessly absorbent. We get praised for smoothing things over, for being chill, for not making a scene, for understanding where everyone else is coming from. But there is a point where empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure. And some people can smell that from across the table. The hardest part is that manipulative dynamics do not always feel dramatic while you are inside them. Sometimes they feel ordinary. That is what makes them dangerous. You are not reacting to one giant betrayal. You are reacting to the cumulative weight of 100 tiny permissions you never meant to give. And when you finally stop giving them, people who benefited from your flexibility will call you cold. They will call you dramatic. They will act shocked that the version of you they relied on is gone. Let them, because your job is not to remain convenient so other people can keep avoiding themselves. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is get quiet, get exact, and stop arguing with evidence. Stop begging for understanding from people who understood perfectly when it benefited them not to. Stop narrating your pain for an audience committed to misunderstanding it. Just see it, name it, act accordingly. That kind of calm changes your life.